Hi, I'm here with Joe Rulo, and Joe Rulo is going to be handling a part of the network on, and what topic did we decide we're going to call it?
We're going to go through political corruption, which there seems to be an appetite out there for interest in that.
Right.
It affects people directly on a local, county, state, and federal level.
Right. Well, that's what Joe's going to be handling on First Amendment TV. But let's learn a little about Joe Rulo. How did he get to where he is today, being so involved in politics? And I want to know, and I think a lot of people would be interested in knowing, when did you first see, looking back at your life, what sparked you to get into politics? What ticked you off? What made you advance to where you are today?
Believe it or not, my political aspirations or my political start was high school. I ended up, I was in a gym class, and kids were talking about they wanted the prom to be a certain way, and the president of our senior class was there at the time, and people were voicing their opinions about it. So I turned around and I had something to say, and he had said, "Oh, well, why don't you run?"
For what? For class president?
Run for vice president.
Why vice president?
Well, because he was president, I guess.
Okay.
I didn't know how it works. And
okay.
It was obviously, there was this motion or wave of people, and when I say there was probably about 50 people in a gym class who all of a sudden started making signs for me. And before I knew it, I had petitions out, and I had no control over the campaign. And before I knew it, I became vice president of the senior class. I even had long hair at the time.
That should be so easy today.
Well, yeah. And what was interesting, though, is that
why do you think not getting out of control, why do you think that people went crazy for you and supported you?
At that time, I was something different. I wasn't your average, preppy, and, I was into rock and roll and heavy metal. I was into fun, and I was like the Joe average, teenager.
What's your age today?
44.
Okay, so you're I got you almost by 10 years.
Yeah, right.
So I know the era, so we're talking you were growing up in the 80s.
Yeah, 88 I graduated.
Okay. So, it was, just trying to remember the lifestyle back then and how it was with music and everything. Disco was dead, heavy metal, rock was in.
Well, a big thing, too, is that like I do now,
right.
I tend to reflect, and I tend to have, it's more than being a certain X, Y, or Z. It's who I am, and people understand that, whether you listen to disco at the time, or club music, or if you were into punk, or if you were into metal, or if you were into country, or if you were the most popular or the least popular, I talked to you. And I was always there for everybody. And I wasn't somebody who, was too good to talk to the person that got picked on.
You weren't part of a group or a clique.
Never, ever was.
You were all over the place.
Yeah, I was. I was identified, probably, being into rock and stuff like that. But yeah, I was the guy that wore the parachute pants, the preppy shirt, and the leather jacket. People were confused; they couldn't even figure out what I was, because I didn't want to be anybody in particular.
You don't follow. You were a leader even back then.
I would say, yeah, and when one of my friends, coincidentally, he asked how I, got, I'd say, projected into politics. I went to a local council meeting in this very town in Beechwood, and one of my friends was at an uncontrolled intersection with his brand new car at the time. This is back in 1987, 88. And he went through the uncontrolled intersection, which he's allowed to by law,
right.
And so did the school bus. And that school bus almost killed him. So I went to the council meeting, and I demanded that there be stop signs put up. And it got a lot of attention. And at the time, town was controlled by the Republican Party. So back in the day, the Democratic Party must have said, wow, we got this young guy. They approached me and they asked me to run. They convinced me. I ended up running, and I was the youngest ever in the history of New Jersey, even to date, to ever run for office, because let me explain why. The primary was June. I was 17 years old, but I was 18 September 9th. So I was 17 years old when I was running.
Okay, so by November's election time,
I was 18.
You were 18 legally.
But I was 17 running for office.
Okay, so you started
It's a very weird birth date.
Because there was no date on what age you have to be to run in a primary.
You got it.
Okay.
As long as you're 18, holding the office of the council.
Okay.
You know, and from there, I ran for school board, and everybody knows about Ritacco.
Right.
And how I went after Ritacco. And
for people that are watching this that are not familiar of you, let's say in North Jersey or elsewhere, explain what Ritacco is.
What we had in Ocean County was a major scandal. We had in Toms River, our school board was controlled by what most people would call a mob boss. And this guy turned around and he was basically selling contracts for insurance companies and getting in return vouchers for college tuition, getting free watches that are worth tons of money, was getting payoffs. And, you know, he was arrested. I was basically the only one in the whole entire Republican Party in New Jersey.
Was bringing it to light.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, Christie was going to appoint this guy as the chancellor of education for the state, and withdrew his nomination.
So this was before Brett Schundler?
This was after
or after Schundler?
After Schundler.
Okay.
I'm sorry, before Schundler.
Okay.
And Christie was not aware of this, and he withdrew his name immediately. But what I had done when I knew what was going on is I called for not only his resignation 2 weeks before he got arrested, but I also asked that the Ritacco Center, which is one of the most popular places where the big country bands play and rock bands and things like that, it's called the Ritacco Center. I said remove his name, and I told the school board to do an audit. 2 weeks later, he gets arrested. The school board let this guy stay in office. They played the game. And all these kids had to see this guy get arrested. But the point of the matter is that everybody knew that this guy did it. Nobody had a press conference. Nobody had the guts to stand up to him. And this is the same guy that when I was a young kid running as a Democrat for school board, whether I be Republican or Democrat, I ran for school board and went after him as well with different ethical conflicts. So, on a local level, I started as, high school, and then I worked my way in. I ended up running for, like I said, in that, and then I decided to run for freeholder. They chose me to run, and that's a big position. That's a countywide position. I was only 27 years old. And one story I want to tell you, which is interesting, is are you familiar with Operation Bid Rig?
Somewhat.
Operation Bid Rig was the largest...
I just want you to understand, just because I'm interviewing you, I might not know everything, and a lot of people might not know everything. So I'm trying to get people to know what you're about and what the conservative movement's about. So think of the interview as explaining to new people that are getting into politics also, as this also be an education.
Gotcha.
On what's going on. So this Operation Bid Rig had occurred in 2009. I was in New York City watching television, and before my eyes, I saw dozens, if not almost 100 people get arrested. Out of those people who got arrested, I ran for freeholder back in 2007. A meeting was called. I was a Democrat at the time. I am a Republican now. But a meeting was called, and my running mate and I, at the time, met with this gentleman who wanted to coordinate our campaign. The gentleman who wanted to coordinate our campaign met us at a diner,
which is the ongoing irony that most of these people who got arrested in Bidrig
Right.
all met at diners. This gentleman meets me at the diner and with my running mate. And my running mate at the time was, trying to get me to want this guy to be our campaign manager. So I had said to him, let's sit down and talk to him. The gentleman sits down with us. He looks me in the eye and says, there's a certain way you're going to win this race. And I'm looking at him like, okay, the Republicans have
Now you're already running for Freeholder.
And I'm looking at him.
They approached you.
They approached me.
Okay.
And I'm
it's
looking
not
at
like
him.
you were thinking of running, and then you had to look for someone that could help.
No. I was
You're a
already
campaign
already the
manager.
nominee.
Okay.
And I actually, believe it or not, won a primary. I ran, actually,
No, what I'm trying to get to, it's kind of interesting how they selectively seeked you out.
of course they do. And when I tell you this, you're not going to believe this. This guy ends up telling me that he has a way that I can win this freeholder seat. So I looked at him in my mind and said, well, the Republicans have controlled the freeholder board for 100 years.
Right.
And we've only had 2 Democrats in like 100 years. So even if I did win and my running mate ran, we would have no power at the time because there had to be one more seat. Because there was 5 on the board,
Right.
so 3 was control. So
Right.
if you have 3 out of 5, the
Right.
Democrats would have controlled. Well, moving on to the story, this guy looks at me and says, well, listen, I need you to take care of so-and-so if they donate to you. So, in other words, if this professional,
Right.
lawyer, engineer, donates to you, then when you become freeholder, you have to guarantee me that they're going to be the lawyer, the county engineer, the county legal team. I looked at him, I said, absolutely not.
So he just came out right up and forward and didn't hide anything the way he worded it.
It
to
was
you.
the first time my virginity was broken.
So okay,
with
that's a
corruption.
good way to describe it.
My
Right.
cherry was popped.
He didn't
period.
hide anything. He didn't dilly-dally and mince words to try and say, if we get you elected, there's certain people.
There was it was the most abrasive, blunt, corruptive meeting I've ever had. And to add to it, I looked at him.
I'm asking you that because I'm sure most of the people in the conservative movement didn't run for office, and you wonder, how did these people really approach you?
This is it.
You think it would be like in a movie. No, he came out right in your face and basically told you.
And it was orchestrated. And this was they were basically trying to feel me out, that if they funneled money into my campaign, would I cut a deal before I won so that, and I looked at him, I said, number one, I said, that's not how I operate. I am going to choose who the county attorney is, who the lawyers are going to be,
because freeholders
when
are
I'm
involved in
elected.
a lot of positions.
Well, there's 5 people.
They have a lot of say of what really goes on in the county.
But what this guy didn't understand, and I think he did understand, is that even if I won with my running mate,
Right.
that the guy next year would have to agree, because we would have needed 3 seats in order to change those professionals so that the people who donated to us,
Right.
we could make that decision. But I was unwilling to even go to that point to say, well, we can't do it anyway. I looked at him and said, no, I can't make a decision based on someone donating to me. You have to earn it.
They want to put you in office like all the other corrupt officials, knowing that you're going to answer to the people that want certain favoritism out there.
That's against...
You're basically a puppet for them.
Now it's called pay to play. If
Right.
you can get that on recording, you can get that person arrested. But ready for this? You sitting down?
I think so.
This gentleman that approached me was one of the people who got arrested
In that whole thing.
in Operation Big Rig in 2009, and I was so proud of myself that it was almost a...
Well, your integrity shows there, and you would have been probably one of those people arrested also.
And I'm just so glad that I was brought up with a great man of a father who taught me right from wrong, who taught me, he used to say, all the time, Joey, you're too honest, and you can never win office because you're just too honest. And I didn't understand what he meant, I guess, because I was just too young. And I remember when I was a Democrat, he was like, "What, are you kidding me? You're in a Republican county. You're going to get the house burned down." Kidding around, of course, but because you're in a Democrat, you're in a Republican area.
You're not playing ball with them, and you're cutting into their financial windfall.
You got it. And what happened is,
it's basically legal mafia.
I ran for this position. I ended up garnering, ready for this, 53,000 votes, 27-year-old kid, and I only raised $5,000. The following year, the conservative Republicans approached me. I was so fed up with the Democratic Party because I realized that there's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats when it comes to, in other words, the Republicans were doing a really good job in Ocean County. At the time, I was very happy with the Republicans, and they were telling me when I was running as a Democrat, "Oh, go after the budget and go after taxes." And I looked at them, I said, "There's nothing to go after." "Well, just say it anyway." I'm not going to lie, and this is another thing. They wanted me to lie and tell people that, taxes are being increased, and they weren't. So there wasn't really anything to run on other than, which I ran a great campaign. We wanted to save deer from being killed. We had an idea to come up with fences so that there weren't accidents, and that was getting a lot of press. Skate parks for kids that are all out right now.
Right.
That's what I came up with back in 1997. Now they're all over the place. That was my idea. I did petitions in every high school. We won the straw polls for all the high schools. But long story short, with the freeholder race, I lost that election, and I was approached the following year by the Republicans. And, they wanted me to get involved, and I saw it as a major opportunity to serve, because once I was a Republican in Ocean County, I was able to go after the issues that were dear to my heart, like helping people with flooding problems and road problems. I knew who to go to now, and I can help people. But it's all the same game. In other words, if you run for office and you don't take care of the professionals that put you into that office, there's not going to be any re-election money coming in. And it's not a matter if the deals are cut, they are cut. Every person who runs for office, except for myself, makes deals, and that's how they propel themselves into office. And there's not one politician in New Jersey, not one, not even our governor, who hasn't worked deals in order to be elected and reelected. And it's a shame, and I believe that the system is flawed. I believe that it's not possible for a decent, honest, uncorruptible human being like myself to ever be elected to hold office, ever. Not at that level.
Question I want to ask, and I'm trying to think of it the right word. Why do you think the public buys all this bullshit that they hear from these Democrats and Republicans? We constantly hear people saying they're going to lower taxes from both parties, and they don't. Why does the public, I'm trying to guess, besides the conservative people we know in the Tea Party movement, the Libertarian movement, they know it's all BS, but why is the general public not learning that they keep hearing this and they keep voting this way?
It's a great question what you ask. It's a magic trick. It's a magic trick. They tell the politicians, they use magic tricks. They use things that called magic polls. They know exactly what issues to go after.
What I'm trying to get
that run away from the real issues.
Why won't the public, besides the people who are going to be watching this network, because we know, I'm trying to say, why do they keep buying this bullshit? I'll give you a perfect example. My mother's first cousin down in Florida, we called him up last year, probably say October, November, what's doing this and that. My mother tells him, no, we've been my name's Robert Goldberg, obvious, I'm Jewish. He's down in Florida. He says, she tells him that, we're active in the Tea Party movement. And I said, what are you doing with the Tea Party movement? They hate Jews. They're hateful, nasty, evil people. And I'm like, why do these people buy this bullshit?
It's propaganda.
It's propaganda, but don't you have the common sense to ask yourself, why are these media networks saying that? You got to question. All they're talking about is such evil nastiness of a group of people saying they're racist and that and everything, and we're far from it in the conservative movement.
It's a full circle. What happens is not only are these politicians buying the media, they're using their dollars for mass advertising. They're controlling townships where, for example, when you want to advertise, the township has to advertise for different things. Those newspapers they have to pay the newspapers. Local cable stations have to get paid. I'm talking about not only when they're running for office, but when they're elected, they have purchasing power of tax dollars, so it becomes compounded. So when you have the media involved as well, what happens with the media is they tend to, there's two different things. Either they're being bought or they're being manipulated. And if you see certain politicians that almost use a propaganda machine, and they start with a few select media sources that they throw a bone to, and what they do, ready for this, is they get out an issue that they want to talk about, and they make that what you want to hear rather than what the people really care about.
I know they're marketing it in a certain way. I'm trying to figure out, why aren't the people getting smart enough to realize it's a whole gimmick and scheme?
Because people are fighting for their lives. People are on a daily basis have health problems. They're working.
Right.
They have family. They're underemployed, overemployed.
Well, that's why I created
hours.
this network also, because there's a lot of people that can't go to the local Tea Party meetings or the Libertarian meetings or local township meetings or county meetings. So here, when they get home, they can watch it on the network. It's either pre-recorded or we'll have it streaming live. That's why I created this. Because there are a massive amount of people that are interested in being a part of this. They just are living their lives and fighting for every little minute of the day.
And let me tell you another thing, Robert. I believe, sadly, that people are starting to give up. In other words, it doesn't matter. I mean, you look at the scandals that are going on.
Well, my brother's like that. No, my brother is like, he's not interested in politics. He says, it's all fixed, it's corrupt, and I'm trying to tell him, it's that way because you're not getting involved. It has to be part of your life. You have to make it part of your business because it affects your business.
I've decided to focus on the battles rather than the war. In other words, I can be an influence with, my celebrity status and be able to reach out to people when I see something injustice happening, and to expose corruption and to sway that public opinion and to try to reverse their manipulative propaganda machines with the truth. And people who follow me on Facebook, for example, it's addictive. I mean, I find issues that people don't understand, and I make it simple and clear. This is what they're doing. This is why they're doing it. And it's corrupt. And once you expose that, you see all of a sudden there's a reversal. And I like to make a difference like that.
Now, getting back on track after the Rotaco thing, where did you move back on to more to today?
So what happened is I had a little bit of, bad luck. My dad ended up getting brain cancer back in 2007, but the miracle was they gave him 3 months. He lived 2 years. So I ended up going to Puerto Rico for a week to relax. Long story short, I rescheduled my flight, and the time I was supposed to leave is 1 o'clock. I'm sitting there looking at my clock saying, wow, I'm so glad that I didn't go back home. I need to rest for a few more days. Some lady walks up to me and goes like this at me, and I'm wondering what she's doing. She asks me to be in a movie. Well, the reason I'm discussing this is, at the time, I never would have ever thought I would want to be an actor. That's what I do now.
Right.
So I get back, and what do? I decide I'm going to run for Congress. So that was 2010, and I ended up making friends with John Runyon. I saw John Runyon as somebody who was going to run. He wasn't going to take health insurance. and he was going to limit his terms. And I said, I don't need to run against him because that's why I run, so that there's a difference. And he's actually going to be one of the first guys I've ever seen not take the health insurance. And in fact, John Runyon isn't running all but 2 terms, which I'm proud of him. At that point, I stepped back for about a year, and I saw the Senate race come up, U.S. Senate.
And that's where I first met you, when you came to the East Jersey Tea Party meeting.
Yeah, and I nosedived into it, and I had enough support. What's interesting, and a lot of people don't realize it, is I did not have the endorsement of the Tea Party. I did not have the endorsement of the GOP.
Well, at that time, the
But I
Tea
had
Party was
slips.
kind of confused. Do we really endorse candidates, or are we just trying to
I had the,
educate people? So that's what was going on
You got
even
it.
back in our group.
I got help with your group. I got endorsed. But the rest of the Tea Party, and the point is, there were some major victories that, you know, the GOP didn't want to talk about in this primary, although I was not successful. Number one, Salem County, where I worked the hardest because I saw it as a swing.
Right.
We ended up losing by 100 votes there. I spent $3,000. I beat.
What did the Republicans spend?
They
Because
spent.
you were a Republican candidate now.
Yeah, the Republicans probably spent $1 million. Easily, with all the infrastructure they have and everything else. And in fact, the Tea Party candidates spent almost $100,000.
See, I think this is the message that we have to get out. Look at it, look what we're spending on running a campaign and how good our candidates are doing.
My
and look how
cost
much
per
they're spending.
vote. My
So-
cost per vote was low.
Oh yeah, it was low.
It was unbelievable. I could have won the race if I had a couple $1 million.
It's like the Bayshore Tea Party was supporting a bunch of people running as Republicans for conservative Republicans, not Republicans, and they were primarying a bunch of people up in their area. And I did a video of them. It's on the network. And you look at Joe Rulo was running for the office at the time. How many millions of dollars they spent the Republican Party to win these seats, compared to the Tea Party conservatives, really didn't spend much. It was so. We got to get that message out to the public. Look at the difference. Why are they putting millions of dollars into these campaigns, and the real true conservatives are hardly spending anything, and they're doing very well.
And you brought
so you
up.
got to say to yourself, you know what? If they're not spending that much and they're doing that good, maybe their message is correct.
Well, you brought up an interesting issue before about, you know, it's local, county, and then state. Well, when you have a state election, the local races are all controlled by a certain party. So all those professionals that get their contracts and the vendors, they all put together their money, and so does the county, and it's all in one pack. So they all share the money, so that they want to control the local races, which are your council and your mayor.
Right.
Once you get a council and a mayor seat, then you want to go after your county, which is either a form of executive, it's called an executive, which one person runs the whole county, or you have something what they call a 5-board freeholder board, which you have 5 people and you need 3 for control for a certain party.
Right.
Well, then you have state races, which is the Assembly and the Senate, the upper and lower house. And that's what happens, is it's all in the same purse, and they use different packs. We could sit here for 3 days and 3,000 years talking about reform of packs, but you know what the bottom line comes to is that they need to start going after these contracts that people are getting in exchange for services. In other words, before you're elected, there should not be any promises at all for other than for good government. Your votes should not be bought prior to. Politicians would not be involved with politics if there wasn't any money in it. In other words, they end up financing these vendors and these different professionals finance the politician's campaign. Once they finance the politician's campaign, he wins election. Ready for the cycle? Then that politician finances them back by feeding their families and paying their mortgages and their
Giving
cars
them
with the contracts.
Family jobs or whatever.
And it gets even better. Then they retire the politician after 3 or 4 terms in
and
office.
they wind up working for
and then
them.
they work for them. You know, I do solar energy.
Right.
And I did it for free. A lot of people don't understand is that I educated local mayors, council people, state representatives, John Adler, the congressman's office. They all came to me. And a lot of these local towns and counties that came to me, they had their engineers, they panned off and gave them all the free work that I did with free feasibility studies, free analysis, free engineering work that I did, that I wasn't going to charge. I wanted to save the taxpayers money. They turn around and give them the information, whether it be it can't be done, and if it can't be done, they had to do the study anyway and charge the town. And I already found out that...
So they were using your work for those engineers, and they were saying that this
less
is not gonna
billable
work.
hours for them, and they
were just
charge for
taking
the
money.
hours.
They were getting the money regardless.
Absolutely.
So you should have gotten the money because you did all this work.
I didn't want
But
any
you did it
money.
as a
The taxpayers got screwed.
Right, but you
for
did it
their
volunteering to save the money, and they took your information and used it for their own financial gain.
Money. Yes. And that's politics and the way it works. And, you know, I could sit here and, you know, you have politicians out there who do sound bites to try to say how great they are. But that's a little tidbit that a lot of people didn't know about, you know, is that I, you know, went out there. I also exposed the fact that, you know, PSE&G, which is a electric provider, they got $760 million of taxpayer money, and they put solar panels all over the streets.
Right, on the telephone poles.
Well, the problem is that PSE&G funneled money into every politician's pockets, from the governor's office down to the Senate, down to the state assembly. It's so corrupt. I'm tired of it. I am so glad that I'm an actor and that I'm an activist and that I want to make a difference. But I realize that, you know, you look at someone like John Runyon, Congressman John Runyon, who was in office from 2010, let me rephrase it, 2008 till now. He's out because it's a brutal game. If you're not corrupt like him, he's not corrupt. He's not taking health insurance. He's basically not going to serve more than 2 terms because he wasn't in it to begin with to make money off of it. That's when you know somebody when they get out, because there's no money in politics. There's none if you're not corrupt.
So financially, was he struggling because there was no money in it and he was too honest, so he was just getting the basic salary?
No, he wanted to serve.
No, I know he wanted to serve in so much time, like you said, you were going to run for one term.
He's a millionaire. He
with
doesn't
2
need
terms,
the money.
but if he was that good of a conservative and that honest, we need to keep that person. At first I agreed with you a while back that, you know, serve a limited time, but you know what? If you're that good and honest, we need to keep you. I'm thinking now we need to keep you in here to prevent from someone being corrupt taking over that seat.
It's almost impossible, because if you're not corrupt, you have to deal with...
So every campaign you got to raise money to fight
Yes.
this because you're not getting it from the Republican Party. Like Steve Lonigan really got no support from the Republican Party.
Because he doesn't take, you know, he's not, you know...
He's not a ball player.
He's not padding and filling up the pockets
Right.
of the right people. You know, just like when I ran, I had people approaching me when I ran specifically for U.S. Senate, which is a different game. I wasn't a Democrat anymore. I was a Republican in a Republican county. And I had mayors, I had, you know, different high-level officials that were backing me, even though I wasn't being supported by the main party. And people knew that I was the golden boy in a lot of these towns that had control. They knew that I was the golden boy on the county level as well. And they knew that I had friends in Washington as well as in the State House. And they would, even though I was running not with the main establishment, they knew that I had influence. And in the same sentence that they would ask me, that they would tell me they were going to donate, they would ask me for a favor, and immediately I would say, I'm rejecting your donation, and I'm not interested, and I can't help you. I would have been willing to help you for free, because you're a tax-paying citizen. But because you approached me and offered me a donation in exchange, I cannot do that, because that is illegal. And it's sad, but people, you know, they're so used to payoffs that they don't even think twice about doing it.
It's their addiction.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that is really hard, is that I have made it very clear, and that's why this is kind of my calling, I think, to expose political corruption. Once you are identified, which I am, as the guy who is against political corruption, the guy who calls out, the guy who speaks for the people during a corruption scandal, you get known as, the guy that the establishment can't trust. Remember, their game is, we want to control the town, we want to control the mayorship, we want to control the council, we want to control the county, we want to control the state, we want to
control the citizens, we want to control everything.
Yes. And I'm unwilling to let them control me. Therefore, my gift in serving is my intelligence in the establishment, the infrastructure of politics, the ability to be able to identify, why this person's being elected and why they can't do a good job on a corruption standpoint, and what they need to do to steer themselves away from that situation. And on a local level, on a state level, on a federal level, I'm able to do that just by public opinion, just through Facebook, because of all of the thousands of people that I'm friends with. If I post something and expose something that's unjust or something that's corrupt, it's out there within a couple of days now, within a day or two, and then you keep sharing it. And that's how the establishment works, is they keep sharing the same idea over and over again. Well, I could do that on Facebook now. I don't even need to be an elected office holder to be able to influence good government, honest government, not corrupt government.
Well, I'm hoping what you're going to be contributing to First Amendment TV will help other people, not only reporting on the corruption, that's what you want to do on First Amendment TV, but I hope also you can help teach other people in other areas how to find this information and how to report it.
Absolutely.
So that's what Joe Rulo is going to be doing on First Amendment TV, and that's a little about Joe Rulo. And any interesting topics of corruption that you're going to be reporting on that you can think of now? How many can you think of that are brewing that you're going to be reporting on?
I got a few. I want to let the viewership think about it.
Okay, so you have some good stories that we're going to come on.
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks very much, and look for Joe Rulo on First Amendment TV.
Thank you.